live. Test. Hi, everybody. Just going to make sure that the stream is going here. Alrighty. Well, let's go ahead and get started. I can't actually see how many folks are connected in the chat, but I've got it open in a separate on my laptop here. So if you have any questions or comments, then please hit me there. So hi, welcome everybody. It's been a while since I've streamed a game or anything, and I wanted to stream a little bit of something that I messed around with just a little bit recently. I'm not making anything seriously with this, but yeah. So semi-recently, my old friend from Tuki Marin, David Pittman, released an add-on for his game NEON STRUCT, and with it he released the level editor. And I was like, oh, that's interesting, because the engine for NEON STRUCT, as well as his previous game Eldritch, is voxel based, in that it's kind of like Minecraft, in that you can just build cubes in the world, and that's what the entire world is made out of. We're in the editor right here. I managed to get it working in Linux and fire it up and stuff, and we can switch back and forth between in-game mode and editor mode. And I was really eager to try this out, because I hadn't messed with a voxel-based, block-based editor before, and I wanted to see what it was like. I wanted to see how he had solved some of those particular problems. So yeah, I ended up coming up with like a list of some notes on, what I thought was cool and interesting about the Neon editor and not, and then I realized that it might make a decent stream, and so I opened up a bunch of other 3D level editing programs, and so I want to try to talk about those as well, in sort of a compare-contrast sort of way, because I've used a bunch of different 3D editors now, and they all have different pros and cons. So yeah, starting with the Neon editor, I came up with a page of notes too. Sorry, I'm going to be alt-tabbing a lot here because I've got a bunch of stuff open. So yeah, one thing that I really liked about this that I knew was going to be cool is that because the entire world is tile-based, you have a nice unit for dealing with the world. Obviously, you kind of, the constraints of this building technique are published right up front. You have a very clear idea of what you can and can't do with it, and I think that's really valuable, because in a full 3D sort of editor, you sort of know that you could make anything, but that's actually really intimidating. Whereas with this, I'm just playing with blocks, and like I'm not even, I'm just sort of dinking around. You can really sort of doodle in 3D here. But in addition to laying down individual blocks, you also have this thing. I can middle click and place this red wireframe cursor here in the world, and then I can hit shift middle click, and that creates a bigger red wireframe box. And that's this region in the world. Then if I hit enter, I can fill that entire thing in with solid blocks. And if we're in no clip mode, obviously in the editor, we can just fly through walls and whatever. But we can fly into this thing and see that it is indeed completely full of stuff. So yeah, we can also hit control middle click and jump here, and then we can hit shift enter. Yeah, and then we can chop something out. And so in this way, we can do a lot of different things. And I'm by no means an expert in this, so I'm not going to be able to give like an amazing, awesome demo or anything of it here. But see if I did it right. Yeah, okay. That's more or less what I wanted to do. And then if I hit Shift Enter to chop out that thing, I accidentally chopped out the back wall here, but I can very easily go in and re-add it. And I've got my wall back. And I can make a little doorway here. Whoops. Oh, it didn't quite take how I wanted. And I can chop another thing. And so yeah, that's pretty cool. And I really enjoyed working with this. Yeah, you can also, like, this is the implicit edge of the world here. Oh, sorry, somebody's asking in the chat, will the recording of the stream be available somewhere? Yes, it absolutely will be. Everything that I do on Twitch, I upload to YouTube afterward, and I link it on Twitter and stuff. So yeah, you'll definitely be able to see what I'm doing here. Sorry for keeping you up late. And yeah, check my YouTube channel later for a recording of this stream. So there's an implicit world edge here that we can see by, like, sort of the holodeck wireframe edges here. And the cursor won't go any further than that. The red cursor won't go any further than that, which ends up being useful for doing things like this, where we can stick it against a far corner and then fill it in, you know, and things like that. I can fly outside of the world, and then I can... Oh, actually, this might not work. This might not work how I'm expecting. Yeah, I'm still definitely kind of getting the hang of this, but... Oh, I just completely neatly subtracted. So yeah, I worked with this for a while, and there's probably a lot that I'm missing. So if any of the following notes are things that David already knows that you know, does have a facility for, then I apologize. I tried to dig into this as much as possible, but yeah, some of the notes that I came up with were, let's see, whoop, not that. That's Trenchbroom. Itchy nose. So yeah, a big thing, and I like, it's at the top of my list in terms of difficulty, is that I can hit numpad 0 and switch back and forth here, but obviously I have to reload I have to exit back out and reload the mission before I can let's see, I can return to title. Yeah, and then I jump back out. But I do have to reload the mission file before I can... Oh, I didn't save it either, so that was silly. Oh, and gosh, yeah, I guess I lost my progress. So yeah, I'm very new to the workflow here. But yeah, obviously being able to switch back and forth between game mode and this mode, like, that is very non-trivial, because, you know, having to reload the entire level and all that is no mean feat technically. There's a whole bunch of things you'd have to probably change about the editor, but that probably would be a huge win. All of my other suggestions are going to be way more feasible than that, except for, like, yeah, this next one is also probably a doozy, is just having real-time lighting. NEON STRUCT has, like, this really nice smooth lighting thing going on, and I'm not sure if how much of it's pre-calculated, how much of it's just, like, you know, cool global illumination or something like that, but yeah, so obviously seeing that in real time in the editor. Oh yeah, the other major thing that I forgot to cover was entity placement. So this thing that we're looking at right here is a ladder, and I can put down, I can choose a light, I can fly around, and I can put down a light in the middle here. And then I hit R, and that places a light at the spawner location. And it's this thin wireframe thing here that says spawner neon light. You can do the same thing for all kinds of different entities, like stairs, and that's like a stair mesh. You know, doors, enemies, pickups, all that sort of stuff, and that's cool. The other thing that you can bring up in a menu here are the different types of blocks, like the basically different textures. And yeah, you can put down a bunch of these. Whoops. All right, definitely still working out the kinks here. And yeah, you can just have different types of blocks and be putting them down. So that's kind of analogous to your texture picker or whatever. So I think another thing that would definitely be nice to have, and again, this is also like non-trivial technically, so I'm sorry for like sounding like I have these demands, but being able to preview these entities, because like this ladder and the stairs and stuff has an in-game representation that has like dimensionality. Like this ladder here obviously takes up a certain amount of world space, and being able to see that reflected in the editor would be a real time saver. Okay, that's all these sort of tough stuff out of the way. The other stuff is a lot more like low-hanging fruit and stuff, and it just kind of came out of my thinking about how this whole workflow worked and all that kind of stuff. So I think I was thinking, what if this workflow makes it very easy to build out a new room here? Like I can go bam and just create like a whole new, create a big new room. So I can make a big massive space very easily. But I was thinking like, well, what if I had built this whole thing here and I decided that I wanted this little connecting tunnel here to be shorter. How would I do that? Well, I could select this thing right here, and now we've got this. But I don't think there's a way of like copy pasting was the first thing that came to mind as like what would be cool to have here. But I started thinking about that, and it's like, well, pasting would have like a tricky visualization, because like what would you see? Would you see like a ghosted version of this 3D geometry? And then I was like, well, maybe it would be much simpler if you could just hit like a directional arrow key, like shift control whatever directional arrow key, and move the currently selected red bounded area along a given world axis. So like take this entire thing here, I don't have a mouse cursor here, but like move this entire thing one tile to the east or to the west or to the north or the south or up or down, and then it would just overwrite anything that was previously occupying that tile. And then you could hit that key multiple times if you wanted to scoot it over by 1, 2, 3, 4 degrees. So that's something that probably wouldn't be super difficult to do, and it would make it so that you could tune proportions on your levels, because like sometimes you do your initial mass out of the space and you're like, okay, this room is a little bit too big, and like I said, like I keep saying, like it is very easy to add a wall and then go down to here and chop that thing off, and now I've moved it over by 1. But doing that operation multiple times takes work if you've got any entities that are in those tiles. So I think like being able to nudge a selection, a 3D volumetric selection by increments along a given world axis would be pretty cool. Maybe this is all super impossible and difficult, and I just don't know. This is, by the way, like I've been really impressed with David's engine that he wrote for these two games and is using on his third game, Slayer Shock. It's just a really tight piece of code. It seems like I've kind of poked around in the guts of it and the source code that he released for Eldritch, and he's a really good programmer, and I'm very impressed by a lot of this stuff. So please don't take anything that I'm saying here as something that some sort of failure of anything that he did. Yeah, the other thing is just like when the red, there's a few things you could do probably with the red, with this red highlight box here. Like there is kind of a double wireframe here that makes it a little bit easier to see at longer distances. But it would be nice if when you have something selected, if it could shade the faces, any solid world faces that it was in contact with. I'm not actually sure how you would do that, and I'm not sure what version of OpenGL this engine uses and whatever, but that would give you sort of a sense of like if you're doing a selection in a complex space, you could see what it's in contact with, because I kind of have to eyeball it here and just sort of understand the space that I'm making on a really deep level in order to understand exactly what the effect of an operation here would be. Whereas if I could see shaded faces, then I would be like, it's something that just helps you get a sense for the space better, and it might almost make it so that you could start using the you could start using the selection tool as a way of feeling around the space, which I think would be cool. Let's see what else we got here. Yeah, as far as jumping in and out of the level, like, yeah, obviously live level reload, you know, like changes reflected in real time between the game view here and the editor view. Obviously, that is probably a whole bunch of work, whereas you could sort of shortcut to that if there was a key you could hit that would, from the editor, that would auto-save you and then load up the mission, the current mission that you have open, and then spawn the player at the editor camera location, so that if I'm working on this room, I hit that key, and then boom, I'm in that room in game, and I've saved myself having to return out to the menu, and then loading up the thing, and then, you know, debug running all the way to the space that I was working on in the editor. So that would, I don't know how tough that is, but that'd be cool. Yeah. Oh yeah. Sometimes, you know, like I think it would be cool to have if there was a key you could hit that would move the red wireframe editor brush here, just move it to the tile that the editor camera is in. So if I'm like boom, one corner of the building's going to be here, and then boom, if I could hit that, and then I would have like roughly the extents of a box in space. I think that would be cool. By the way, the editor documentation that I'm working from, David put this up on Steam as a guide for Neon Struct, which is really helpful and cool. It's possible that like I read over this stuff and, you know, think I got some of the basics, but yeah, it's a really good guide. It's very comprehensive, and it actually, a lot of what it's concerned with is going through like gameplay objects like keycard doors and AI patrols. Like, so there really is like everything that you would need to know to do a full-on like Neon Struct fan mission sort of thing here, which is pretty cool. Let me check the chat here. Hi, Pear. Pear says, regarding directional movement, it would be nice if you could temporarily turn it into a non-destructive brush as you're moving it around, and then you could choose whether an active brush was additive or subtractive or XOR. That is a really good point. Yeah, like, yeah, there's already this concept of like a spatial operator, but like choosing more flexibility about what that does in a given context, I think is just generally cool. Another thing that I noticed when I was like, okay, cool, I can build a space here, I can like create a new chunk of stuff. Now I've done this, it would be cool if there was just like a plus or minus key sort of thing that would grow this rectangular volume, grow it by one tile or shrink it by one tile. And then you could very easily like create a hollow room or whatever, and yeah, that would be cool. What else? And then there's just like some really, really minor stuff here, like there's a help thing here, and you can hit Alt and bring up a little like more extended help text or something. It would be cool if that just showed like every single shortcut, like basically everything that's in that guide. Drawing this red rectangular world thingy after all of the world geo, so that you could see it through walls and stuff. That might actually be confusing, so I don't know, I'd kind of want to see that. Also, drawing it with a greater wireframe thickness than 1. I know that that's not supported on all implementation, or it's deprecated in some implementations of OpenGL, but then it could like always, if OpenGL was drawing it at always 2 or 3 pixels thick, then you could, that would give you more depth cues and stuff. I don't know, just very minor stuff like that. But yeah, overall I think this is really cool, and it definitely gave me a good feel for the potential of 3D voxel-based editors, and it's cool. And I do on and off get the itch to make something in this and make a cool Neon fan mission, or just a weird thing that just happens to use the Neon engine or whatever. It's super neat, and I'm really glad that David released this editor for people to play around with. I hope people make cool fan missions for Neon Struct, and I will totally play those. But yeah, I thought that I might jump from this into some other stuff here, some other 3D editors, because Neon is kind of tackling a lot of the same problem. Like many 3D level editing programs have come along to to let people edit true 3D spaces before, and I thought I'd jump into some of those. I don't have Unreal Ed on this machine. I'm in Linux right now, and I don't have Unreal Ed 4 running, but I figured I'd jump into the old Quake 3, like the old Quake 1 through 3 engine editor, Radiant. This is Q3 DM17, the famous, floating in space level, and yeah, like I've used this a bunch. I used it for my 2008 IGF game Purity, and this is a more classic level editor. It's obviously a much older piece of software than Neon or Sauerbraten or Trenchbroom that we're looking at here. But yeah, it sort of revolves around different ortho viewports. Like on the left side here, I've got these different. Hold on, let me. I'm trying to select the thingy that I want. Yeah, so you can select brushes, and you've got a 3D view here, but you can't actually click on anything directly on that. Or maybe you can actually. Yeah, it is aware roughly of what. Yeah, I can select these things. But for actually manipulating stuff, I have to rely on the ortho views here. And Radiant specifically has a pretty darn cool like brush dragging thing here. So like, see, I'm just dragging a box in the view, and it is becoming a view in the world. And by default, it's covered in the caulk brush, which is this weird implementation detail of like Quake style engines. I can then switch between top, front, and side views and just jump in and out. It's got a pretty good visualization here for like whether the brush, it draws the brush wireframe, but also draws it shaded, so I can tell if it's sticking, how much it's sticking into the ground. That's always that's a super good Radiant feature that I always miss in other editors. But the main thing, the thing that makes Radiant like really, really powerful, well, just makes it really fast and good flow, is that I can resize a brush. I don't have to click on the edge of the brush or anything. I don't have to like click on a handle or put it into a special mode or anything. If I have a brush selected and I'm in an ortho view, I can just click anywhere above an edge that I want to drag up, and it resizes it along that axis. So like, this just absolutely crushes every other editor that I've worked with for ease of resizing, which happens to be one of the most like frequent operations in a 3D editor. It's less the case in a 3D level editor. In a 3D program, like a modeler or something like Max or Maya or Blender, scaling is less commonly used of an operation, but when you're like roughing out architectural shapes, it's really, really killer, and so this brush resizing stuff is definitely what I would steal from Radiant if I were making a dream editor that has the best features of all the other stuff I've worked with. Yeah, like if you want to subtract stuff, then you actually have to. There's no such thing as subtractive brushes or whatever. So if I actually want to create like a little open-topped box here, what I have to do is, I forget what the keyboard shortcut for this is, but you select the brush that you want to do the carving with, and then you hit the CSG hollow thing, and then you can delete it and see the result of your carve. And what you can see here is that it has chopped it up into, it has just sort of taken a best guess and chopped it up into 4 different additive brushes, because there's only brushes. And yeah, so like this result is always going to be a little bit arbitrary. I absolutely could have created this exact same kind of result here by just doing this, but it's definitely faster and sort of more intuitive sometimes to do it the other way. So yeah, that's that. Those are some of the unique strengths of Radiant. And you can place down your little entities here and place invisible trigger volumes. You can turn those off. Yeah, Longest Yard here has the hilarious, like, the entire level is enclosed by this black box, just so that it appears to have a completely featureless void skybox. But yeah, it's otherwise a very conventional Quake level. And yeah, everything that you do, oh yeah, and the other thing that you can do in these kinds of like ortho view based engines is that I can, let's see, where did I end up here? Okay. It also has this kind of like it knows that I selected this brush right here, and so it takes the last selected brush as the height of any new brush that I attempt to drag out in the view. That's a really interesting, important like tool concept, I think, which is just like, if you can reasonably infer what the user will want 90% of the time, and it's the correct thing, if you have some sort of heuristic like that, you can save people a lot of that has tremendous flow wins. You can like really go a lot faster and kind of move at the speed of thought if you have a good deduction like that. And Radiant found a bunch of those, I think, pretty early on. So what was I going to show here? Oh yeah, that's right. I was going to go into a side view here and show off the clipping. So this is brush clipping, and let's say that I wanted to take like a chamfered edge. I wanted to chamfer this edge right here. I can just do that by hitting the X key and setting 2 control points here. And then I think if I hit enter, then it will do that. Yeah. So yeah, and so that's how you can make wedges and anything that you need to, any of these funky type shapes that you want to like have be at an angle. GTK Radiant also has support for Quake 3, specifically the Quake 3 engine's like patches, which are like these curved. They end up just turning into the same kind of BSP brushes, but they're like tessellated and built as geometry in a different way, and it is a wacky, cool feature. If you get really good with them, then you can do all the cool curved surface things. There's nothing else really like it, because like very shortly after Quake 3 came out, the entire industry just started moving towards like building these kinds of, like, if you wanted to build this kind of shape, you would just build it in 3D Studio Max or Maya and then just import it as a static mesh, as Unreal has always called it. But yeah, for Quake 3 at least, they were like, we want to have these cool high detail surface type things, but we still want to be able to build them in the editor because they're like really intimately integrated into architecture. So they built a cool, like, I don't know, it was, I never got like super good results with it, but I also didn't get like really deep into Quake 3 mapping. Let me check the chat here. Yeah, cool. Okay, so yeah, that's Radiant. I think that's just about all the like really notable stuff about Radiant. It's a conventional editor in lots of other ways. I mean, all of these things have in common that you can place entities like this little ammo pickup here, and you can move them around and edit their properties. Like I forget what this is a little entity properties editing window. And this reads from a definition file, and it has like different editable keys, and in this case it shows documentation for what all kinds of properties you can put on that entity, which is cool. Okay, so that's Radiant. No, let's not save. And then sometime later there came an editor called Trenchbroom, and this thing is pretty cool. It's an editor. It's a 3D Quake engine editor. I know it supports Quake 1, and it might support other Quake 1 derived games like Half-Life 1 and stuff as well at this point. But this editor tries to completely get away from the ortho view editing based workflow of yore and just go entirely all in on 3D view editing. Now, I haven't really messed with